Tallboys and Trackmasters is brought to you by Expert Exhaust. Expect more for your money. MTB Shock Dock, your choice for suspension needs. High Gear Success. From helping racers get sponsored to motorsports event operation and promotion, shift your passion into high gear. And by Cycle Mart, your motorcycle parts store. So I need to switch up to some white beer.
Truly is a tale as old as time. Whatever gets you to look for.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special live on location episode of Tallboys
And Trackmasters.
We are here with a local legend, Mr. Tom Mckee. Tom, thanks for sitting down with us today, man. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You guys kind of tricked me. I mean, you said you were looking for tall boys. I thought you wanted me because I was tall. I didn't know about the beers.
Yeah, you are very tall. I'll give you that. So we want to also send a thank you to Brian Holmes for kind of helping mitigate this and set it up with us a little bit. Tom, I know you a little bit from the ARMA days and being able to come up and do some of the vintage racing with my old man. So let's just start from the very beginning, buddy. Where were you born and raised in?
In the suburbs of Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay. And what was your childhood like, and how did you kind of get into motorcycles to start with?
Probably was the luckiest person ever. Had great parents, always lived in nice neighborhoods, great home. But all my life, my father talked about riding Indian motorcycles, and excuse me, he flew airplanes, and so it was always on the table. It was something I always wanted to do. And then I remember very clearly, you know, in your lifetime, you have a couple of the perfect days. And I remember being 8 years old, and we were at the airport, and a man bought a new airplane, and they didn't have enough room for me to go. And the guy wanted my father to check him out in the airplane. And they said, "Tommy, would you stay here?" And I said, "That'd be fun." He said, "Well, you can sit on my motorcycle." And I was sitting on this new Harley, and in front of me was a Stearman biplane. And I knew that day, this is what I wanted.
Yeah,
you know,
that's amazing.
And then the third thing was my aunt and uncle lived on a farm, and that was the final key to. So I didn't really develop very well in life. I got right where I wanted to be.
You got that early bit by the bug in
Yes.
motorsports and growing, I'm sure. So did you do any type of racing growing up? Was it mostly riding street or dirt, a little bit of everything?
When I first started out, a friend of mine in elementary school, he bought a Fox mini bike, or he got it for Christmas, I guess. And we would pick vegetables on their farm and save money. And he wanted a bicycle more than the mini bike, and I got the mini bike. And I think that I was around 9 years old, might have been 8, might have been 10, but somewhere around there I started riding a mini bike. And I remember that the Great Escape movie came out with Steve McQueen. And I always dreamed of that jump over the fence on that mini bike. So that was, I guess, kind of the start. And then when I was in 7th grade, I saved my money, and I bought a Honda S90. That was my first bike. And we lived near a 3,000 acre quarry. And so that's where we all learned to ride motorcycles. And it was always from then on about how was I going to be a racer.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I mean, just looking around, you have so many different disciplines and style of motorcycles that we have here. I mean, would you say that you're probably more street oriented than anything else, or?
I don't know that I could say I like one better than the other, but I know that anytime that something happens that's life changing, you know, my prayer is always Lord, don't let me not be able to trail ride. You know, I love dirt bike riding. I love racing. Tried all kinds of different racing. Never was able to make a professional career out of it. But no, I guess that's part of this disease is, you know, I rode Harleys, I rode choppers, I raced Yamahas, and, you know, then we went into short track and hill climbing. It was a BSA. So it would really be hard for me to ever say I just don't love motorcycles.
Yeah, I think that's true of pretty much anybody out there that's involved in the sport. You know,
It's always the N+1 approach. The correct number of motorcycles is whatever you have being N+1.
Well, that's what people, you know, for years have said, well, what is your favorite bike? You know, and I really enjoy vintage motorcycles more than modern. And you know, it's whatever bike you're working on that day. They're, you know, it'll change tomorrow with the next bike. But yeah, I don't know that you could have one favorite bike, but I have really tried to, not my interest, but my collection have changed over the years many times. You know, it was first about what was the best investments. Then you get into what was the things that you didn't get to race when you were young. So you try to get them, and then you just realize you can't own anything. So you try to, and then there's no rule to this. This is just my opinion. You try to collect what was the best of the best. And you know, what you think's the best may not be what I think. So, you know, that's kind of what drives me now.
Well, I think that a lot of people out there, you know, maybe they have a certain like for a certain discipline bike, but I think at the end of the day, we're all appreciative of two wheels.
Exactly.
And when you have, I mean, I could go through a million things we got sitting around us right now that are just mind blowing, and this is history anyway.
Things that I thought I wouldn't get to see in person.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Things that you can look at, it's there in front of you. It's not just a picture and that type of thing. So we really wanted to just extend an awesome thank you for just letting us even just glimpse this stuff.
Well, same thing. I just thank you guys for taking time and coming over, because I don't have the ability to do this electronically. So this is a nice thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you mentioned wanting things that you couldn't have when you were younger. That's a huge driving force of the vintage hobby, is guys wanting to come back around to, you know, the bike they had on the poster in the bedroom and just couldn't get the money together. The family couldn't get the money together. So I think that's really a huge factor of kind of a revival of some of these 60s, 70s, and so on bikes that are starting to come back around.
Yeah.
We were cleaning an old building out, and I found a box. It's not here, but it's in another building, and it's exactly what you were talking about, Trevor. It was cutouts of brochures of all the dream bikes that I had, and they were thumbtacked onto my bedroom, and I never knew that, you know, when I left home, I never knew my parents saved them, and I just found that, and it is neat, you know.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your property in your area here, man. I mean, obviously, Preston County, in our opinion, is one of the best places to ride or be on a motorcycle.
We spend a lot of time out here.
Yeah, we do, most definitely. So how did the Sky Ranch come to be? I'd love to hear that story.
Well, in 1981, I think, my father was diagnosed with cancer. And I wanted to, he always had an airplane, and I didn't have an interest at the time. I was a kid, and, you know, it was all about dirt bikes, and I, you know, knew I wanted to be a racer someday, and this and that, you know, we all dream about that stuff. And anyhow, he sold his airplane to ride motorcycles with us. So when we thought his time was limited, I sold my motorcycles and scraped together enough to buy an airplane. And anyhow, it was a great thing. They said he had 6 months to a year to live. And once we got involved in airplanes, he made it from 82 till 1998. So we really had a great time with the airplanes, but it was a hobby for him, and it became a living for me. I sold airplanes and projects for 30 years. And in Maryland, you would find an airport and you'd get started, and then, you know, somebody bigger always took it over, and you couldn't build buildings on property that wasn't yours. And I was just so discouraged with Maryland. I wanted the first town across the West Virginia line. Air out with it, and you know, you could haul projects in, you could have trucks and trailers, and So that's how it became the Sky Ramp, was due to the airplanes. And this was an airport since 1948, and there's a grass strip that you can land and take off on. So that was the idea of the Sky Ranch, and you know, and then it was just perfect, as we could trail ride here and hold events and, you know, all that kind of stuff for the motorcyclists.
Yeah. So that kind of came after the airport was established, right? You had
Yes.
the property, you had the passion to ride motorcycles. I know, I'm not sure anymore, but I know you were kind of partnered up with Arm when we had Arm
Yes.
events here. I got to come up with my old man and run that one year. I believe you said Dick Mann was the one who put the grass trap there, right?
Yes, it was really a blessing. Fred Guidi was one of the coordinators at ARM at the time, and I think he took Dick Mann's place as trustee. But talked with Dick on the phone, and he said this would be his last trip out east. And he came and stayed almost a week, I think 4 or 5 days. And boy, we got to talk about old bikes and things that I had. And he gave me a lot of really good advice. And I have 3 Dick Mann motorcycles, but it's really, really cool. There was another very dear friend of mine, Bob Shawley. He was a factory Triumph racer with Gary Nixon. And Gary had already passed away, and Bob was spending a lot of time up here, and I was going to his place in York, Pennsylvania. And he was so excited when he heard that Dick was coming here. And he came up for the week, and I'll never forget it. They got down in the field, and Bob said they couldn't talk to each other. It was a really emotional moment. And they were working, and Dick kind of kicked the ground. He said, "Jolly, who'd ever thought 35 years later we'd be on this kid's ranch trying to build a racetrack?" And we have a lot of pictures of them flagging and in the tractor and stuff. And man, I thought that was cool.
Oh, absolutely. So did it start out as just vintage racing, or did you just kind of have other events and stuff? Talk about the event process.
There's 2 other guys that held some modern events here, and the 4-wheeler thing was just so hard on the land, you know. And then, you know, as that got evolved, I wanted to do events. You know, I got back into riding dirt bikes again, and I had for several years, and I just didn't want somebody to get hurt on a jump or a kid to be hurt. I'd just been out to California and spent a day with David Bailey, and you know, my buddy and I coming home, we talked about it. I said, "Man, you know, how would you live with yourself if you were the promoter and a guy that's as good and talented as he was would end up in a wheelchair forever?" And so the vintage thing was just perfect. And ARM actually came to Morgantown, the Mountain Fest first, and they were doing the motocrosses, but they were coming here to do a cross country and the trials. And so they just thought they would rather be here. And the motocross thing just evolved from there. And it wasn't perfect for guys with newer bikes, but it was really, really what I liked, seeing the really early stuff, you know. And, you know, I still just love that Rickman and Cheney era, and, you know, guys racing Gold Stars and motocross frames and stuff, you know. That was before my time, but that was what's really interests me. Just like you guys are interested in stuff in the 70s before your time. So for me, it was the early 60s period.
Yeah, we've talked about that on the show before. You know, what did bull sport and adventure riding start out as? It was guys on old bikes like that. It's never meant to be off-road, exploring and going off-road and that stuff. So it's to see that firsthand out on your property, it's got to be a smile for us.
When I would go to California, I had some old time friends there. They're all passed away now, but in Dick Mann's era, they all desert raced and knew each other. And man, you know, they take an old Harley VL or a JD and have them. And at one time we had a bike here. It was a 47 knuckle, I think, and it was an enduro bike. And I would love to have that. There was no knobby tires, so they were using surplus tires off of Jeeps for your off-road tire. And I just, you know, that's really cool to me.
Absolutely. I've seen some of these old Harley Hilltop bikes that had sections of chain, steel bar, anything they could get a hold of to stud out that back tire for these hill climb events.
We tried everything, even in the '70s, we tried every other tread pattern out. I still have some of those tires from my hill climber. We tried sheet metal screws, and for on the ice and for the hills, and it's cool stuff.
That was a really interesting period of time. Things were a lot less ironed out. There was a lot more experimentation, a lot more homebrew solutions for things. And
When I started trail riding, the only thing we knew about trail riding is what we saw in Cycle Guide magazine.
yes,
I never saw a knobby tire, the guys older than me, they had X6 Suzuki Hustlers, with high pipes. They had, Yamaha Catalina 250s, the Big Bear Scramblers. I mean, we didn't know about, other than you saw pictures, we never saw a high fender or anything. And I remember one Saturday, there was a big power line, I guess. I don't know if it's gas line or electric line anymore. But every Saturday, the guys would come on Triumphs and BSAs to try to get up this hill. And some sailor was going back out west somewhere, and he had a bike that we'd never heard of called a Hodaka. And that little Hodaka went up the hill, and that ended everything. There's no reason to bring a 650 out because a 100cc East 100 just did it, and boy, that was like I think probably the first real dirt bike that I ever remember with knobby tires and stuff.
yeah, that's such a crazy concept to me. Being in the age of the internet now, you're exposed to pretty much what the pros are running on a knowledge level for tires, everything at the touch of your fingers on a keyboard. You can figure out like what dummy tires Range Artist is running, stuff like that. So the idea of not ever having seen a knobby tire up until some guy comes from, out west, that's an amazing concept.
I know we talked about this when we were kind of touring the place a little bit, but it has to be cool to live through the progression of motorcycles to where we're at these days. I know we were saying that it seems like it's kind of tapered off and everybody's kind of doing the same thing now, but you talk about what you witnessed as you grew older seeing.
Yeah, I guess I was very fortunate. I grew up with all older guys, and they grew up in the '50s, and they always say, "Oh, Tom, you just don't know. You never got to live in the right time." Well, for me, I don't know how it could have been a better time. I mean, like I said, you couldn't always buy a motorcycle magazine, but when you saw them, we wanted to do everything they did in California, and I lived near the Triumph Corporation, and great things were happening in the flat track world. And that's really sad to me that there was that time when it was America's sport and it was dead in the United States, and I mean, they're trying to resurrect it. But boy, I can remember going to different motorcycle shops, and you'd see a Triumph and a Trackmaster frame. That was the most beautiful bike you ever saw. And then you go to the Harley shop, and it was a very, very rare thing. But sometimes you'd see an XR 750, and I mean, nobody knew what the formula was yet. And then by the mid to late '70s, every short tracker was the same. That you knew what the program was, and whether it was an inch shorter or something, I mean, we saw the evolution of suspension, Mert Lawwell started that, but prior to that, nobody believed you would go on a dirt track without a rigid frame, and so that was cool. And man, for so long, we just kept hearing about this thing called motocross, to ever believe that, the grandfather of it almost was in Morgantown, West Virginia, and Dave Coombs, or the things he was doing. And you just think as a kid, man, if I had a farm, I'd have a racetrack. You couldn't understand why everybody wasn't doing it. But, and then, I was pretty old before I ever went to Daytona. So I never really ever saw a road racer, and you never believed you could own one. But then when the sport bikes came out, I mean, if I'd have been a little younger, wow, instead of a chopper, we'd have had, man, to think you can have something that capable on the road, that is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing, the progression. Like we talked about, maybe it's kind of started to die down, but I'm sure somebody's going to come out with something next that's going to revolutionize the industry and change it.
So it's kind of a funnel effect. You had all these different companies trying out all these different ideas. You know, like, I think Kawasaki came out with a power valve for the two-stroke. They were kind of the pioneer of that, and, going to monoshock and stuff like that. Stuff that kind of became the formula now, you know, was kind of the evolution. There's a lot of stuff that was completely died off, and we kind of hit this pinnacle point where I'm hoping at least we're gonna fan back out in the other direction, or more companies are gonna start trying other things to try to set themselves apart, so maybe that's gonna drive some more innovation.
Well, you know, when you're talking about the evolution, when you think, I can remember, and I probably still have the magazine, when it was announced that if you didn't have a two-stroke road racer, a four-stroke will never win
Yep.
again. You know,
Yep.
when Dick Mann won on the 750 Honda, and then the following year on the Trident, from then on, it was dead.
Yeah.
It was never going to be another four-stroke. We knew there'd never, ever, ever be a four-stroke motocross bike. And, you know, as Trevor said about the monoshock, you know, that was the coolest thing, but that would never stick.
Yeah.
You know, and
That's funny. I talked to one of the older guys we ride with that said the exact same thing. He said, when I first saw the monoshock, I thought it was the biggest joke, the biggest, you know, there's no way that's going to stick around. We can't get away from just regular twin shocks. There's no way it could be any better. And within, you know, a very short period of time, it completely wiped out twin shock design entirely.
And that's why I think we're, just what you said, we're probably in a pivotal area where we think it's all been done, just like we believe.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about it earlier. There was a time in my early life when there was never going to be another piston engine. Everything was going to be a rotary engine. Now, the fun part of having a rotary motorcycle is to show a young person because they've never even heard of it.
Yep.
So, you know, we think we got it all figured out now. Somebody's going to come out with something revolutionary, and
Yep.
I'll be too old for it, and you guys will be right on the edge to enjoy it. So,
Hopefully not.
and maybe your kids, you know.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think, you know, I can remember clearly when it was the end of Harley Davidson, and you know, and the V twin, that was just when the Goldwing came out, you know, and you had a 4-cylinder, there was no life for a V twin.
Yeah.
2 years later, every Japanese company in the world was making a V twin cruiser,
Right.
you know, so
Yeah.
we don't have a clue, you know, what's next.
Would you say, as a whole, just kind of going through everything, has the hobby grown more, or has it started to kind of die off a little bit in your opinion?
Well, that's a tough one. I think it's like an ocean. It goes in waves. Just as we talked about, you know, right now, the big bikes, the cruisers, you know, nobody believes that there's a young person's going to ride those, you know, and so we're at a lull right now. And I remember where dealers just thought there was no tomorrow, you know, they had to sell bicycles to keep doors open, and you know, lawnmowers and stuff. And, you know, if you go back to the late 70s, early 80s, there was a big movement to shut all kind of public land down.
Yep.
You know, motorcycles were such terrible things, and they hurt everything. And then all of a sudden, you know, you get something like the Hatfield and McCoy, or the Bureau of Land Management opened the deserts back up out west. And, you know, I think maybe it wasn't the quantity that it once was. You're not going to see 1,000 racers come out on a Saturday or Sunday for a desert race, or, you know, like what we saw in the 70s at the motocross tracks, but the quality is so much better. And you know, we couldn't get a dealership to give you a new tire or a helmet, and now guys are living rock star lives as professional racers.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so I don't know. I can't say that I think it's dying. I mean, every dealer that I know says if it wasn't for side by sides, they'd be out of business. So it just evolves. That's all.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let's see. I know you used to, I don't know if you still do, you used to put on events like All Brands Dual Sport Ride, right? Talk about that, how that came to be a little bit.
I guess just what you were just talking about. Trends come and trends go, and a friend of mine and I, we went out to California, and we rode a dual sport ride from Riverside, California to Las Vegas. And I thought that was so cool, and I think West Virginia is one of the only places that you could do it. And so we called it a dual sport, and we just had a lot of problems. People were coming with KLRs and bigger bikes, and many of them, the V-Strom was brand new then and very big, and they just weren't capable bikes for the rocks and the trails and the mud around here. And we do have a lot of water.
Yes.
Boy, today's the day, and it's just pouring down rain. But
Very full.
yeah, so they weren't quite the right bikes. So we split that then, and we would have a day or two of trail riding. We tried to do both adventure ride and trail ride in the same day, and boy, it's just an awful lot to do. A couple 100 miles in
That's
there.
very funny.
We know exactly what you're talking about.
We had the exact same progression you just described.
Yeah, the 3 or 4 detour, we try to split it up to do all the hardcore Facebook guys one day and the big adventure bikes the second day. And yeah, trying to blend those two crowds together nowadays is impossible.
It really is, because there's different bikes and there's different amounts of level of riding. And so, yeah, that's kind of what we had to do, is split it up. And I guess that I've never really got this, I don't know what the right term is, these big bikes, venture bikes. Yeah, I don't really understand that concept, because we've got this great big enormous motorcycle that's not really, now there's some exceptions, some guys that come on them even rode 2 up with us, so I know it can be done, but generally those guys got all the gizmos and gadgets and never get off of the street, but they won't ride a street bike. So
Yeah.
I'm not exactly warmed up with that concept, but I don't know, I'm getting older, starting to look a little better.
It's BMW's kind of got this gravel gold wing moniker, and I mean, what you're describing is very similar. There's guys on $30,000 bikes. It has more technology and rider aids than you could ever imagine. It could even keep it straight on a section of gravel if they had to. I don't necessarily understand the pull of the big adventure bikes, but it's kind of starting to die out a little bit. The middleweight adventure bike segment is exploded. So like KTM 690, somewhere in there, a little bit lighter weight, 700. So that's kind of the hot segment right now in the market.
I guess that I'm always behind the times, but when that adventure thing first came out, well, I'll even back up. When the really good trail bikes, the 4-stroke trail bikes came out, I didn't really understand, and I tried to get investors together and we all know what the formula for a good dirt bike to make it handle is, which took 50 years.
Yeah.
Now all the components are available and you can bolt it together, but they don't have to have 10 inches of suspension or more to ride in the woods. To me, if you could bring that bike down and get the center of gravity lower, and I still ride an IT 175 a lot, and you can go pretty darn fast through the woods on a lower bike. And I thought that same thing when the Yamaha Enduros were out back in the 70s. We couldn't afford more than one bike. And you could get a 360 Yamaha and you could ride it to school every day. You took the lights off and you weren't racing on the weekends, and you could, take your girl out and go for a ride. And those bikes did everything. And I guess that's what's thrown me off with this whole adventure thing. You don't need it. But then again, maybe they made it for Preston County roads because it is kind of cool. You think they're not a good street bike, but you can still go 50 mile an hour over the potholes. So maybe it is a good thing.
Well, my moniker is any bike can be an adventure bike if you try hard. Yep. There's so much stuff you can do on a bone stock, let's say an old knucklehead, shovelhead, what have you. There's guys been out there, Matt Spears, we always see him on social media on the Gold Wing doing hill climbs.
He actually just did some BDR stuff on Gold Wing. I watched this video.
Good for them.
Adventure is out there, and it doesn't matter what you're running.
You guys don't know this road, but you leave Parsons, I think it's called the River Road, and it goes. Yes. Well, there was a bunch of guys came here and camped out, and they all had their stuff strapped on their big KLRs and all that. And I met them over in Masontown somewhere, I was on my KTM and I thought, man, this is a trail ride. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So I parked the bike and we came here and had lunch and I took my V-Rod and rode the rest of the ride. And I wasn't trying to do it to be mean or arrogant. I wanted to show them, I don't think this is what you can say you're charging people for an adventure. This isn't an adventure. This is just to say you did it.
It's similar, there's a big explosion, what they call overlanding.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what these guys were
when,
into.
when that first came about, I was still early in college where kind of entered the public sphere. I know people have been into like car camping and travel for ever since they put four wheels and a motor together. But overlanding really started to come about right around as I was graduating high school. And I'd look at these people talking about like, oh yeah, we loaded our Jeep down and camped like 3 days on National Forest. I was like, we just called that camping.
Right.
Like that was just so second nature. And, you know, I look at a lot of the stuff that these adventure groups are posting. It's like, you know, that's just a regular gravel ride. That's not some grand, you know, man and machine against nature and all the odds.
That's right.
That's just a ride down government road.
Yeah.
I guess it all depends on, it's relative to whose adventure.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, Tom, what is your overall goal with the Sky Ranch? I know you've got a lot of awesome stuff on display, which we're going to save for a future date for people to actually come and look at that type of thing. What's your end goal with what you got?
Well, I guess my real goal in life is to share aviation and motorcycling with other people. And I'm very, very fortunate, and you guys are a good example. Well, about every kind of hobby you get into, everybody says there's no young people coming, and that's just not the case. Our youngest guy, he comes a couple times a week. He's 26 years old, and he just bought his first 4 motorcycles in less than 6 months. So
That sounds about right.
yeah, he's getting the bug, and then you know, got some friends from Morgantown that are just gearheads, and they come here early in the morning on a Saturday, and we just work on motorcycles, and you know, we once in a great while we'll, like a bunch of idiots, we get out and ride mini bikes, you know, out on the streets and stuff. So I just want to be a part of it as long as I can. And I told Trevor earlier, you know, I surely hope that I can trail ride into my 70s. But when that's done, then I'll street ride. And when I can't street ride, I'm going to just get a little garage and just keep restoring bikes. And when I can't do that anymore, I just hope I can just come out here and sit. And when I have a bad day, I got another building, and my wife will say, "What'd you do today?" I said, "I just went down and watched the stuff rust today. I had a great day." You know, and I'm pretty satisfied from anywhere. But this thing here, you know, I want a place where people can come and share it with me. I hope that maybe I can share something with them that will help them. And I hope in the very near future to start doing another building with aviation things that I've acquired over a lifetime. And everything that I'm about is grassroots, you know. I don't probably figure in my lifetime I'm going to get a jet, but, you know, I'm real happy flying an airplane from the 30s or the 40s. And that's the same thing with bikes, you know, just to be able to get something out. And I did it on my 60th birthday. My wife and daughter put this together, and I rode 60 bikes for my 60th birthday. And I am really, really hoping that I can have at least 70 bikes to ride for my 70th birthday. And it was really cool. People saw it on the internet when my daughter put it on, and total strangers came and said, "Would you like to ride my bike?" You know, and a lot of the ARMA guys brought racers out. And so, you know, people give to me, and I want to give it back to the sport. And I hope that I never discourage anybody because it's a type of riding or a type of bike I don't want, you know. And I don't ever say, oh, you know, if it's in a Harley, it's not good, or if it's not a Suzuki, it's not good. I love them all. And I just want to share that. And I do hope that at some point in time that I'll be able to open a museum up to the public. And you know, I'd love to have cabins here and camping and more events. And so, I don't know, wherever life takes it.
Yeah, cool, man. Well,
exciting.
you're in a great area, just from our point of view, just for the dual sport and adventure bike crowd. Like I said, we're through here all the time, so.
One of my favorite trails, probably in West Virginia, is a short ride from here,
Yeah.
Peddler's Glory.
Oh,
Yeah,
That's such a fun.
James and I were talking about running it upstream sometime this year.
And also,
We'll have to wait for some drought.
one early morning, we did a trail ride down through there, and I probably haven't dropped a bike in at least 25 years. And first thing in the morning, I hit a wet rock and went down and hurt myself. So that's kind of my highlight of Peddler's Glory, but it is a good ride.
Every time I made a pass through there, I probably dropped one enough for the both of us. And now you get the sun glinting off the surface of that water. There's, the big rocks, the logs and stuff under that. And it's hard to keep it on two wheels sometimes.
That's probably the closest thing to what I remember trail riding in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Was like. I mean, it's all changed and it's so manicured. That's still the real deal
Yep.
going all through there and Coonpecker and all those places. It's a
Yep.
great ride.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about the American Pickers experience, because I remember sitting at the house one night and Dad was sitting there with me and he loves that show, and we're sitting there watching. I'm like, well, crap, that's Tom Mckee. He's right up there in Preston County on the show. What was that like? I gotta ask.
Well,
You're not gonna hurt any feelings.
no, I'm thankful for the experience. They were kind of in a transition where they weren't talking so much about antiques for a while. Everything's turning into motorcycles.
Yeah.
And of course, I love that, Mike and Frank, they came to the antique motorcycle meets for a long, long time. And anyhow, they were kind of having this little upset. And they just said, you got a lot of airplane stuff. That's kind of out of the box,
Yeah.
Can we do something?
Yeah.
And so that was how that thing started. We set up 4 picks for them while they were here. And it just, I don't know how to say it. We're just motorcyclists.
Yeah.
And I couldn't keep Mike's attention very much onto the motorcycles. We're going to the building, And, I really hope that the message from me was that money's, at the time I was really trying to develop a museum and we were trying to work with the state of West Virginia with a big project. And my message is it's not about money. It's not about selling the stuff. I cared more about my mission and my preservation than selling the stuff. And as you guys both know, part of this journey is people have entrusted me with their story and have asked me to share it with others.
Yes.
And so, like Mike was very interested in the WRTT Daytona bike. And, the man that had that bike had sat in his living room and, he wanted it to come to our family, and his story be told. And we have his leathers and I have a lot of his memorabilia. So it's kind of what got me started more in better quality memorabilia other than just bikes. But so that was the message I was hoping that people would get, that this is about more than buying and selling. And, but it came across kind of funny. A lot of people said, oh, I'm so disappointed you wouldn't sell Mike and Frank anything. Well, this is what I do for a living is buy and sell, but what's sacred is sacred, but it was a good experience with those guys. And, it is a funny thing, the power of television. We've been lots and lots of places where somebody would just walk up and say, hey, I think I know you. Oh, where did we meet? Oh, you were on the American Pickers. Well, I'd like to think that, maybe that's not my claim to fame, but anyhow, it was a good experience. I'm thankful for it.
Well, buddy, just you walking us around here and sharing those stories like you talking about is something that we're never going to forget. And it's so awesome to see you be that steward of the history, of the experiences of all the people. I mean, like you said, there is so much cool stuff in here. But I hope that us coming here can kind of help share your story and just show that there's guys, you never know, there's guys right around you that have so much knowledge, so much history and experience with motorcycles that you just got to get out there and network. I think that's a very big key.
I do too. That's all of life is networking. But I do want to thank you guys, just that, you're in a whole different exciting world at your age than I am. And it's just, I'm very blessed that young people do like to share this stuff, because that's not the way it is everywhere, you know.
Right.
Hey, this was a big effort not to sit home and push buttons on your telephone.
I mean,
And a lot of guys your age, that's what they're doing today.
like I said, there's several bikes here that I didn't think I'd get to see in person. Stuff that I've watched content on, read about, read the articles. And to actually get to see it in person is entirely different. You know, I'm kind of an engineering nerd in, you know, a large sense. So to see the designs of the cases, the welds on the frame, you know, how they went about the construction and everything adds an entirely new appreciation for what some of these bikes are. And then to be able to hear the history connected to the people that you knew that own these bikes is really just amazing.
They're very fortunate.
Yeah.
Well, that's neat that you see it from that aspect of engineering and development, because of your trade, you have a better understanding than somebody else does, you know.
A lot of the stuff, I just wonder how they did it pre-computer, you know? I mean, that's,
Well, we talked earlier, you know, I told you my father was an engineer, and, you know, pre-computer was the slide rule. I mean, and that was cool, you know. In the early 60s, when the space race started, you know, with John F. Kennedy as president, my father got out of the shipbuilding industry and got into that, and then most of his friends were. And as exciting as a computer was, that was how innovative a slide rule was at that time. And to think, you know, what they had to work with, and really, I guess I believe that's what brought the computer to where it is, to think what they had to work with and put a man on the moon. Isn't that cool?
Oh, yeah.
You know, we were really before that, before World War II, flying was in its infancy.
Yep, absolutely. I got to visit one of the Wright brothers' original workshops. We went to the Dayton Air Force
I
Museum.
love that. It's one of my favorites.
And we also, my fiance and I, every time we go to Kill Devil Hills when we're out at the beach, I always go to the same display, the same museum of their original engine and everything with, I think it was like cast aluminum. I think it's extremely innovative for the time. And just seeing the blueprints hand drawn of how they're going to lay all of it out, that stuff just fascinates me.
My grandmother has a family reunion book from the super early times, and Wilbur and Orville are in there, because my last name's right.
Oh, isn't that something?
He's
Boy,
serious.
oh boy.
It's really cool.
That's amazing.
There was one thing I was going to tell you. Oh, we were talking about it earlier. You know, when you're little, 100 years is not comprehensible.
Yes.
And now you think 100 years is nothing, and I could just keep rambling on. But, you know, the internal combustion engine wasn't even understood, you know, not very long before World War II. And, you know, you think of these bikes that everybody was just trying to do 100 mile an hour. Nothing that ever, not an airplane, a car, or motorcycle could hit that. And wow, to think that, you know, we can ride a 100-year-old vehicle or fly something. It's the last thing I want to say about progress.
Yeah.
Everything has changed so rapidly since, and again, I'm going to say a lot of it because of the space race, but I'm in a very unique position, and you guys are, but it's coming to an end. Everybody had so much pride what they made in the early 1900s.
Yes, absolutely.
We could go out today and buy a car or a tractor or a motorcycle or an airplane and operate it at 100 years old.
Yeah. Yep.
When I got my first car, it just got an electronic ignition. Well, they gave us so much trouble, you pulled the distributor out and put points back in it. You know, these new bikes come, you're all ready to go trail riding, and one of the guys didn't keep his battery up, and the fuel injection won't work, and you can't go riding, and you can't just jump, and you can't just push start it. That's kind of the coolest thing about where we're at right now. You know, I can go out and have something in my home that my grandmother or great-grandmother had.
Yeah.
You're not going to ever see a solid-state TV 50 years from now. It gets thrown out, you know. Stereos aren't the same as they were in the 70s when everybody bought great big stereos. But mechanical stuff, just like my V-Rod, when Harley Davidson says Tom Mckee should have bought a motorcycle a long time ago, he's had it too long, and they decide you're not gonna get it. You know, we could buy parts from 36 on till just recently, till the 80s. And Harley said, enough of that. We just want new stuff.
Yeah.
These bikes are gonna be a monument.
Yeah.
Because when you can't get a sensor, when you can't get a chip, when somebody decides that we can't have it anymore, that bike stops forever.
Yep,
But to think that you can still collect something that will go on for generations is a super exciting time.
And that's something that I really hope to pivot into as I continue in the hobby. I would like to get more into the vintage side of enduro. You know, my first vintage bike was a little Trail 90. It sits right beside my KTM 350, which is, you know, a fuel injected enduro machine, completely modernized, etc. And then right beside it sits my little oil leaker with points ignition and a 6-volt electrical system.
No, I hope that Honda 90 doesn't leak oil, because it shouldn't.
It doesn't anymore. I replaced the kick shaft,
There you
and
go.
everything, but you know, just to be able to have one foot in both realms at the same time, to me is amazing.
Oh, it is. And then you really are at the genesis to the revelation there, you know, of how things are transgressed. We talked about this earlier, though, how Mr. Honda robbed a lot of ideas from earlier manufacturers. But just think of what he did do. The most simple thing in the world. Everybody prior to Honda had 2 crankcases split up the center, and you bolted them together and wondered why they leaked oil. He reverse engineered everybody else's idea, but he was smart enough to put 2 halves that it all settled in the bottom. I mean, you know, that's cool stuff.
Awesome. Tom, if you could have one extra bike in your collection, something that you've had your eye on for a long time you'd like to add, what would it be? I know that's probably a
this is easy right now because I got my eye on one.
Okay.
But my list is very, very short right now. There's 12 more bikes I hope to own, maybe 14. But right now today, if I had money, it'd be an XR 750.
Okay.
Yeah, I really, really want a flat tracker and road racer. I think needs to be before they get any harder to get.
Okay.
But I would like to have 2 Makos and a Cheney frame Triumph or BSA. And a couple.
Yeah. Just
Well, if you get your hands on you know, some of the Makos or Triumphs, we'll have to come back out and check it out at some point.
Well, we'll pick a warm day here one day and we'll fire some of this stuff up so you can ride it.
Well,
We'll get a couple old enduro bikes.
That would be probably one of the top 10 experiences of my life, without a doubt, to be able to actually at least hear it run, let alone to be able to throw a leg
smell
over
the
it.
exhaust.
Yeah, because I'm just fascinated the history of some of these bikes, and like you said, the fact that something that's 50, 60, 70 years old can be fired up and operated today. It's amazing.
It's the racing bikes that are important to me are kind of ironic though. I mean, you just think it's so important to me, but they're probably in your guys' eyes are very, very primitive compared to what you can buy off the showroom, and to think, you know, these bikes were never available to the public. So it's weird.
That's what fascinates me though, is, you know, like I got my KTM right beside it, the little Honda. The KTM's almost too good. It's almost too forgiving. It's to me, that Honda's just as exciting because it's so much more primitive. It's the bare minimum amount of equipment to have an operational bike.
And you know, they really were more capable even than the better bikes at the time. It's really something.
So that's why like little Hodakas and stuff, you know, I love that. It's the bare minimum. It's a motor, a carburetor, frame, forks, and a set of wheels. It is completely bare bones.
And maybe the things that you guys asked me, or different things are coming to my mind, maybe we're getting too sophisticated.
I think
Yeah,
that there's
I
an
would agree with
aspect
that.
where we absolutely are. Every
Well-
year, the bikes get more electronic, nannies and aids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It detracts from the experience.
To me, in the dual sport world, there's still a reason why the DR 650 is still being made, the XR 650L is still being made. It is simple, rudimentary, and it doesn't require change, because obviously people are still purchasing them and still going out having great adventures with them.
That's a selling point now. It's the simplicity
The
of it.
aftermarket is huge. You've got a carburetor you can work on, an air-cooled 4-stroke that's easy to work on and reliable. That's the main.
Nobody's gonna find a my grandkids aren't gonna find, say, my KTM in the garage and pull that thing out and, do a little bit of work to it and have it running again. The
Yeah.
fuel injector is gonna be completely seized up. You won't be able to source it
That's right.
anymore, versus, a carburetor, as long as it's not so far beyond saving, you can just clean it up, get all your jets and stuff blown out, and have that thing back on the road.
Everybody would not agree with this, but just what you're talking about, I think of a 305 Honda, what Honda tried to make happen there, they thought they had a candidate for a desert racer, and maybe they didn't get it right, but they did run that down the Baja 1,000 miles, so they sure didn't get it wrong.
Sure.
But I think about the Yamaha Enduros, everybody that rides modern bikes now, they might hate it if they had an opportunity to ride a Yamaha Enduro or a Bull Taco Frontera, one of the really, or an IT Yamaha. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But on the same token, exactly what you were talking about, James, that's if everybody had one of those bikes, and I'd like to see events where you had to be in that
Yeah.
category to even ride a dual sport, I think would be a great fun.
Yeah.
But was the suspension great? No, but man, to realize how lightweight a bike can be,
Yep.
what they're still capable of. Are they great at anything? No, they're 50, 60 years old, but they are great in their own way. And I wish everybody could experience riding them.
Yeah, that's something I really want to get into. Like I said, is get some bikes that aren't necessarily collector quality, but that are usable. That I could take out in the woods and go ride, because sometimes it's just fun to step back to that period of
Getting back to the basics.
Exactly.
And where it's just about the ride
Yep.
is what it's all about.
Yep, I agree.
Tom, is there anything else you want to impart on everybody watching there before we?
No, just thank you guys for your time, and hope we can all get together again. And like I said, when the weather gets good, we'll get a couple things out and try it, and you guys can share that with everybody.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
we'd
sounds amazing.
absolutely love to do that. Thank you so much, buddy. For
You're
your time.
welcome.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Trevor.
And as always, we'll catch you guys Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you.